Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast. I am your host, Heidi, and I'm joined by the wonderful Arianne.
Hi, everyone.
And of course, we are brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and I am excited to talk to you guys about some interesting social media. The first one is sort of, you would say, a trial that has been in the making for like years.
Yeah.
And years, and it's finally happening. And this is about the trial of El Chapo Guzman. You may know him as the infamous drug cartel kingpin. Mm-hmm. He is going, I believe his trial began this week in New York. And it is quite an infamous trial because basically it's like everything you want in a drug-related story. Like, he's like a known like escape artist who like has escaped prison and like had like secret tunnels to escape like if police raided his house and things like that. And he's like connected to a bunch of murders. And then also it's just very sad how much his influence of like, he has, you know, caused a lot of the modern day drug trade and everything.
Yeah. He's a smart guy though.
Yeah, he did a lot.
Yeah.
And he is in custody. He is in the US. He was taken from prison in Mexico to, I believe I know right now he's being held in New York. I don't know if that's where he always was.
Oh yeah.
And he was actually taken during the Obama administration, right before President Trump became president.
Okay.
So some people argue that's because President Obama wanted credit for bringing him to the U.S. to be on trial, and they didn't want Trump to have credit for it. But anyway,
Guzman. That's like my family who I'm adopted from, like some years ago. Yeah, that's their last name.
Oh, well, that's.
I don't know if there's any relation, but they're very smart people.
I mean, there could be a connection that way. So the trial has begun, and in the opening statements before jurors, the Federal District Court in New York, the Assistant U.S. Attorney Adam Fels has described Guzman as a man who went from a small-town dealer to a kingpin capable of turning $10 million cocaine deals.
Wow.
Yeah, and his full name is Joaquin El Chapo Guzman Loera, yes.
Wow.
And essentially, the prosecution is trying to paint a picture of him for the jury as a powerful and murderous drug cartel boss. The cartel is the Sinaloa cartel. And meanwhile, his defense lawyer is trying to counter that in reality, Guzman is the quote-unquote leader of nothing, and that really his fame is a myth, since he's trying to argue that while Guzman was in prison, the drug cartel and everything continued on.
Right.
And therefore
despite
he's not... Right, despite him being incarcerated.
Right.
And therefore he's not responsible. So we'll see how all that goes. I don't know if he has a chance with that argument.
I feel like if you have it set up to a way, it's just like a business owner, you know, you can be away from the business and it still runs.
Right, exactly.
But they would still hold you accountable if something happened.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know. I think they're going to have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
The defense attorney is Jeffrey, I'm sorry. Jeffrey Lichman, and he said that Guzman has spent a significant time in Mexican prison and etc., and also in the U.S. as drugs continue to flow into the U.S. And he claims that his client is not a big kingpin. However, before opening statements, a juror actually sent a letter to the judge, and the judge read that letter aloud in court, and the juror had asked to be dismissed from the case because she suffered from anxiety since her jury selection.
Oh, wow.
And they let her go. They excused this juror. So that's how scary it is, because I'm pretty sure, like, any witness or anyone who has come out against Guzman, many times they have been found dead.
Right.
So
she
people
doesn't
are
want
scared.
anything to do it. Yeah. Which makes sense. But I feel like they can't like make all of it on him. Not like as a defense, but for them, I feel like their defense is, oh, well, things have still been going on even though he's been incarcerated. But it's like he wasn't the only one.
Right.
So
exactly.
Of course things are still, you know, happening and drugs are still being trafficked over here, but he's not, I'm sure, the only one doing that.
Right, right. And that's what they're trying to argue, that he's not the only one. He's just the leader, or he was the leader of the group. So, again, I don't know how they're going to win that argument.
Yeah, either. Good luck.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe not.
I mean, because in popular culture, he's definitely known as the biggest drug trafficker. And he's accused of heading the enterprise that spanned continents. It like triggered waves of bloodshed, like throughout Mexico, South America, the U.S. Like he's known for all of these things. Yeah. I don't think they can fight that necessarily. Like he's in songs in Mexico. Like he's in like popular culture.
Right. I think there's some songs with his name, with El Chapo in the America too, which is crazy. But I mean, I guess their other defense would be like, it wasn't him. I mean, he hired people to do it.
Oh, I'm sure. And the prosecutor trying to say that he was personally involved in many of these crimes.
He could have been.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. But we will find out. But the trial could last. They speculate could last up to 4 months.
Wow.
And it began under unprecedented security. So there was like armed escorts for all of the jurors who remained anonymous. There were armed federal marshals and officers, bomb-sniffing dogs. They all stood guard outside the courthouse. And if anyone wanted to witness the trial in person, they had to go through 2 separate security screenings, an x-ray machine, and a metal detector to actually enter the courthouse, and then a similar screening to enter the courtroom.
Wow.
The Brooklyn Bridge was shut down. Each time a police motorcade, which included an ambulance and a SWAT team, shuttled Guzman to and from the Manhattan federal lockup.
Oh my god.
So that's insane.
Yeah. It's like extremely high security there.
Right. And also Guzman is 61 years old.
He's an old man.
I know. He's not like a young guy.
Right.
So, yeah, gosh. He is, of course, pleaded not guilty. But if he is convicted, he is being accused of international drug trafficking, conspiring to murder rivals, and gun charges and money laundering. If he is convicted, he faces a sentence of life in prison.
Which I don't feel like life in prison. I mean, he could die within the next 9-10 years.
I know.
Especially if he was like doing drugs too. Which,
who knows?
Most of them, I feel like if you're selling them, you're doing them too most of the
time. Pretty often.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Unless, I feel like there's always the idea of like, you don't get into your own
the
stuff,
whole, yeah.
But, yeah, who knows? Allegedly, he earned nearly $14 billion as the kingpin of this drug cartel.
Wow.
The cartel, and he is being accused of doing this, employed planes, boats, and submarines to move hundreds of tons of Colombian cocaine into Mexico before then shipping it into the U.S. and distribution hubs in the U.S.
He says submarines.
Yes,
like not just boats and planes like everybody else that has like those, private planes.
All the normal cartels.
Right. They say submarines. Wow.
Yeah, that's insane.
Oh, come on. Extravagant there.
I know. I mean, he obviously had a flair for style.
Right, exactly.
He apparently oversaw the smuggling of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines. I cannot talk today. Methamphetamines, marijuana, and all of that wholesale distribution into Atlanta, Chicago, Miami, New York, Arizona, and Los Angeles.
So, of course, all the main cities.
Of course. Of course. And he is also accused of taking part in at least 30 killings as he reigned over one of the oldest and most influential cartels.
Wow.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So as we've stated, his defense is trying to say that he is not responsible since it's gone on, since he's been in prison.
Yeah.
Because the defense is trying to place the blame on the continuing drug trade on Ismael El Mayo Zambada, who was actually Guzman's right-hand man. And then I also read that Ismael it's been told that after he steps down, his sons will take over.
Okay.
I think he has like 4 sons, and people have wondered if it would be Guzman's sons. Is it Guzman's son or Ismael's sons? But they say that right now, since Ismael is controlling it, it would probably be his sons.
Right.
Because they've been raised in the business as long as Guzman's been out.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Guzman would have probably, showed his sons how to do that. So they might even be working with this Ishmael guy.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they are.
It's like a family business. They're just passing along.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just like a normal store.
I know.
Right now, though, so Ismael has 4 sons, and I believe 3 of them are in custody in Mexico.
Oh, no.
So we'll see. But I mean, Guzman escaped prison, so.
Right.
I don't know
Who
how
knows
that's
what they
go.
can do.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That all makes me nervous.
I know.
Fells, who is the U.S. attorney in this case, said in court on Tuesday that the government will prove that Guzman is guilty. They apparently have audio and video evidence, also text messages, and testimony from law enforcement officials and former associates of Guzman. So we'll see. They seem pretty convinced that they can do it, but I don't know. I'm sure in Guzman's mind he has a good shot. Yeah. But it all just kind of comes down to how well they present their evidence, and how the jury decides to look at that.
Right, because even those, they can be like, well, these people were paid off. How do you know it's not just like some story they're making up because somebody's paying them to?
Right, like people.
So either way, it's crazy.
Yeah, like people fudge evidence all the time. So I'm sure they're going to try and make that argument.
Yeah.
We'll see. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and keep talking about this case, and then we're going to move on to some other interesting social media news stories.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Welcome back to the Social Media News Podcast. We are continuing to talk about the trial of El Chapo Guzman. As I said before the break, the U.S. attorney in this case, his last name is Fells, has said that the government has access to many communications made by Guzman while he was in the drug cartel. They said that they have these despite the fact that Guzman tried to keep them private, and that apparently, they are reporting that Guzman initiated deadly conflicts with other cartels that led to massive spikes in violent crime from 2008-2012.
Just like competing like groups?
Yeah, competing groups.
Okay.
Yeah, or like just other cartels that I would imagine weren't as big as his.
Yeah.
But just kind of like other groups that wanted in on the trade, because it was big money, so I'm sure there were other groups who wanted to participate.
Sure. I mean, why not?
Right. Yeah. And I feel like it's like how in the U.S. we talk a lot about like gang violence and things like that. I think it's like that, but
they're ruthless over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, out here, like, it's like you're going to kill people, but they, go after families and distant families. It's crazy. I just feel like they're more ruthless in Mexico.
I know that also some of the witnesses in this case that are in the U.S. right now that are going to go to court to testify against Guzman.
Good luck.
I think there's like a pair of twins, and apparently like after they agreed to be witnesses, like a member of their family was killed or something.
Yeah.
Like because it was found out that they agreed to go against him. So
it's crazy.
We'll see. So apparently not only did Guzman cause a lot of crime and amongst many other things, he also spread money around like other levels of leadership, not just among those who were in the drug cartel, like members of the cartel, but like they're saying like members of like the government and things like that.
Oh, so he like had government officials and
kind of like he would just pay them off.
Yeah, that's
kind of the idea. And I have a quote here. It said that he spread money around in industrial quantities, as they say, and he was willing to pay $1 million bribe or even more, going from the municipality to the state to the federal government. They call him an equal opportunity corrupter.
Oh, God.
And
Okay.
actually, that has caused a lot of mayors or former mayors in Mexico to come forward and say, like, oh, this is a complete lie. Like, they never paid us off for anything. And I mean, I guess at this point, maybe it doesn't matter if they're not in office anymore,
Yeah.
but they're basically saying that there were multiple people involved in the chain of power that Guzman tried to use, basically.
Right.
And that was part of the reason they're saying he was able to continue his cartel.
Yeah.
Because of,
Yeah.
all of these things. And because they're accusing him of being able to control the cartel while in prison because he would bribe guards and things like that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, to like get communications out and everything. And there, as I said before, there are witnesses who are going to testify against Guzman. Apparently, there are more than a dozen cooperating witnesses,
Wow.
including former cartel associates who are already incarcerated or who have been given new identities and relocated by the U.S. government.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they've obviously been, handed a deal to go against him.
Yeah, and I mean, the defense might use that. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Also, as I said before, Guzman has had many prison escapes. In 2001, he escaped while serving a 20-year sentence for criminal association and bribery in Mexico. And he reportedly broke out by hiding in a laundry cart.
Wow.
He was then recaptured in 2014 at a hotel in a Pacific Beach town of Mazatlan. Mazatlan?
Yeah.
Okay. But the next year, he escaped again through a hole in his cell that then led to a mile-long underground tunnel.
Wow.
That's crazy. And as I had mentioned before, the drug cartel continues to go on while he is in the U.S. In prison. And he's been in prison like for nearly 2 years, and the cartel remains a dominant player in the cocaine trade,
Yeah.
which is depressing. I mean, we all know that like that trade still happens.
Of course, right.
And I just, that's sad.
It really is. That is crazy. I mean, and he's not unknown. Like, everybody know who El Chapo is.
Right. Yeah.
So
Even if you don't really know who, you know the name.
yeah, exactly. You've heard of it, and you know what comes along. Oh, just some drug person. At
Right.
least you know a little bit. But
Right.
this is a lot.
Yeah, and this is like real life. Like he
Yeah.
really did escape prison.
Exactly. Then it makes you think, like, how secure are those prisons in Mexico?
I don't know. I saw some videos, and there was like in his house, there's a bathtub, and then the reporter's like, oh, it looks like a normal bathtub. But then you could lift up the bathtub, and there was steps that went down to like underground tunnels that then led to like the sewage system that he could
wow.
like for the whole city that he could escape through. They had a similar thing where it was like, it looks like a closet door, but then if you reached up into the ceiling, like in car trunks, there's like that pull tab
Yeah.
to make the trunk open up from the inside.
Right.
There's like one of those, and you would pull that, and then another door would open, which would lead you again to another tunnel.
See, he
back
wasn't
to the sewer system.
He wasn't dumb. He knew what he was doing and how to get away.
I mean, he was probably really paranoid as
You
well.
would have to be, I feel like,
Oh, yeah.
because all these
Oh,
crimes and killing people is like somebody might come back for you, or even like
for
within
sure.
your circle. It's like,
Yeah, that's true.
Even those guys, they just kind of get greedy, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take you down.
Yeah,
and
and
take
in
over.
the U.S., there are like during Prohibition, there are like really big houses and like bars and speakeasies that would have like secret passages and
Oh, yeah.
things like that to escape the police. So I mean, it does happen. It's crazy.
It does. That is crazy.
We're going to talk about another crazy story that I saw pop up on social media. This is about a family in New Jersey, and this really scared me. I know it's past Halloween, but I mean, maybe it's not holiday appropriate, but it freaked me out.
Yeah.
Apparently, they are being terrorized by what they call the Watcher, which is super
That
scary.
sounds creepy by
I know.
itself.
And really, this reminded me of like the Amityville Horror. It was
Yeah.
kind of like that type of story.
Okay.
So a New Jersey family, that's apparently Derek and Maria Brodus, and they bought a home in Westfield, New Jersey, in 2014. It was fulfilling a dream. They'd always wanted a house. But soon after they purchased it, it became a nightmare because they began getting letters from, quote unquote, the Watcher, who is a figure who cryptically referred to secrets hidden inside their house and things like that. It's really scary. I have
Like
a
just
quote
about the house, about them.
about them as well.
Oh my
So like
gosh.
multiple things. I have a quote. It freaked
Oh my
me
God.
out.
Yeah.
Okay. So from one of these letters, it says, This is apparently from the Watcher. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? And then another letter read, I guess the letter continued. It said, I'd be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. So I'm assuming that's talking about their kids.
Yeah, that is creepy.
Yeah.
Do these letters, are they signed by like the Watcher, or they just kind of dubbed it that name?
I don't know. I think they I didn't see like a image of the letter or anything.
Yeah.
I think they're saying they just kind of dubbed it the Watcher.
Right. Oh, that's creepy. I would move.
So scary. Yeah, well, apparently they tried, and they moved out and went to live with Maria, who's the mother. They went to live with her parents, and then they attempted to sell the house, and they had bought it for nearly $1.4 million, but they couldn't find a buyer. And apparently these letters were delivered to their house, and they were delivered through the mail.
What?
Yeah, which, of course, not like handed to them, like through the mail.
Yeah.
And they had been processed at a U.S. Postal Service distribution center about like 20 miles from their town. So it was legitimately like mailed through the system.
Was there like a return address? There was nothing there?
Mean, obviously, I guess not. You know, they weren't able to track it down. Yeah. And they contacted the previous owners to see if like they had any trouble.
Yeah.
And apparently, I guess the previous owner, her name is Andrea Woods. And she had lived at the home with her husband, John. And she told the family that she once received a letter from a person claiming it was their turn to, quote unquote, watch the house too. But Andrea said it was the only letter that she received in like 23 years of living there. And she ended up just throwing it away. So it sounds like she did receive a letter, but it was only one.
Yeah.
And then she like didn't think much of it.
Oh, what the creepy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I kind of have goosebumps right now.
Yeah. That is scary.
So apparently the family just got more desperate, and they called in experts, which included a former FBI agent, because they were trying to figure out what was going on.
Right.
But the investigation stalled and really only apparently like ruled out a few suspects. And then the neighbors actually were suspicious of what was going on, and they accused the family of making the mystery up.
Really?
Yeah. Which again kind of sounds like Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
And the family, so they no longer live at the house, but they rent it out, which I would not want to rent there.
No.
And apparently they try and stay away from the house as much as possible, unless they like really have to. But they're also like losing money on the house because the rent doesn't pay enough to cover their mortgage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they had, because, nobody wanted to buy it in the first place.
Yeah, no one wants to be there.
Right. Do they tell the renters about these letters, or do they ask
God,
if
I
they...
wouldn't. But I mean, there's no way I would.
Just because I would want to know and be like, okay, well, since you're going to be renting, if you get any of these, maybe even just a heads up, like if you get one of these letters, will you let us know?
Well, this continues.
Oh, man.
So one day after the new tenants had moved in, so Derek, one of the owner, he went to the house to try and apparently like chase away squirrels who were living in the roof.
Oh, wow.
And then when he got to the house, one of the renters handed him a letter. And the letter was addressed to, in quotes, the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria.
Oh my gosh!
So they know their names, which is so scary.
Wow.
And the letter, this is a quote, the letter said, "You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors, who has no idea who the Watcher could be, or maybe you do know, and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move."
Wow.
And then they brought the letter to the police, but the investigation is continuing, and they haven't come up with anything.
That is creepy.
Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared sitting here.
I just feel like even if it was like a neighbor and they sent one letter to the previous owner, Andrea or whatever, and maybe they were just like, oh, they're a cool family, and just left them alone, and then they just didn't like Derek and Maria, so they just keep tormenting them.
They just like the other people? I mean, maybe. Who knows? That's terrifying.
That is. I'd be like, everybody's a suspect in this neighborhood. All of you.
Also, it's creepier because, like, it's not like the house is haunted.
Yeah.
It's more like somebody like, which is
somebody.
more believable.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a person watching you. And that's more frightening to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And it said, like, apparently Derek and Maria had like, nightmares and, like, anxiety attacks because of it, which I totally understand.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So super scary.
Yeah, it is. It's creepy because it's like an actual person out there messing with you.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't know who it is. You don't know if it's your neighbor. You don't know if it's a coworker or, something.
Yeah. No, it's terrifying.
I swear it would freak me out, but I would be so mad too.
I mean, I would just be scared. I would move immediately. I'm like not a fight person. I'm just a flight person. Like if something like that happened, there's no way. Like if I was back in the day when like people were moving, you know, from the east to the west coast, you know, like pioneers and stuff, there's no way I would go. You know, like I'm not the type of person. Like I'm not going to go take that adventure.
Right.
Like I'm not a risk taker. I would not stay in that house. No way.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know, it just doesn't make sense that it goes through the mail and nobody, like, with an investigation, they can't figure it out. Because you know who delivers the mail, you know the route, and then even, like, the time it goes through the post office, like, they have specific people working at those times, you can break it down.
Yeah, I mean, I guess even if they figured out, like, you know, what time it came into the postal service, like, I don't know, there's no return address. It's hard to say. I guess you could try and just trace back, like, what, you know, mailbox it came from, but
right.
I don't know. That's so scary.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we're going to take another break, and then we're going to come back and talk about some more social media news.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Social Media News Podcast. We have finished talking about our frightening, sort of scary House the Watcher story, and we're moving on to something that is pretty interesting. And I'm not like an astronomy buff, you know, like I'm not like super into planets and everything, but this is interesting. This is an article I saw about a potential new, what they're calling a super Earth, and that was found sort of nearby, actually, in a nearby galaxy. So, apparently, 6 light years away, there is one of the most promising targets for astronomers and such to figure out what might be a world beyond our solar system.
Nice.
Another planet that is of interest and also might be sort of similar to our Earth.
Okay.
So a lot of astronomers are kind of always investigating new planets and things like that. And this one is particularly interesting. It orbits what is known as Bernard's star, and that is the closest single star to our sun.
Oh, wow.
Bernard's star is a small red dwarf planet that's older than the sun and about 1/6 of its size. And it is invisible without a good telescope, and the closest star wasn't even discovered until 1916.
Oh, okay.
So apparently it's one of the most famous stars in the sky.
Yeah.
And people have been looking at it for like planets and such around there forever. And in 2016, let's see, Rebus? Is that how I say his name?
Sure.
This is going to be difficult for me to say his whole name. Ignacy Rebus, who is from Spain. Him and his colleagues began aiming their instrument, which they call Minas, which is like sort of like a telescope instrument to look around and see what's going on.
Right.
And that is at Spain's Calar Alto Observatory. Okay. And they began pointing that towards Bernard's star. And they were looking for like little wobbles in the star's motion, which is basically gravitational fingerprints of an orbiting planet like tugging on it as it goes around. And data suggests that they have collected data sets for over like 20 years by like all the different like instruments that they've had over time and things of like that. And through all this data, there have been like suggestions that another planet might exist because of like these little wobbles.
Right.
But the data hinted that it likely took 233 Earth days for a planet to make an orbit.
Oh, wow.
Like around that little sun.
Okay.
And so the scientists are claiming they're about 99% sure that there is like a planetary signal, like with these little wobbles. But he said that, like 99 isn't 100. So they're still looking around to see what might be. And some people are saying that like, oh, it's not anything like, Rebus was saying like they're going to put out their scientific paper and they're probably just going to get shot down by other scientists, but he's kind of like, that's just how science works. You know, like everyone tries to test your claim.
Yeah.
So they're trying to put it out there and see.
Yeah. Well, even then, I feel like if it's 233 days, they kind of guesstimated for a planet. Wouldn't they have seen a planet if in their 20-year data research anyway?
I think they're saying they've seen like hints of it, which is why they're kind of at like, we're pretty sure there is something there.
Right.
But I mean, it also could be that like their instruments just got better. Yeah. So it enabled them to better see things, like maybe 20 years ago, they just weren't able to see it.
Okay.
Because they didn't have, because they're like using this new instrument. So it's possible they just didn't have good enough instrumentation to find it.
Sure.
And I think also other scientists are probably going to question this, so it sounds like it's like a difficult thing to pinpoint and a difficult thing to find.
Right. Well, even with it being so small, I feel like they can even throw the argument like, oh, it might just be ready to die off.
Right. Yeah. It might just be a dying planet or something, so it wouldn't really matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might matter. I don't know.
It does matter to some people.
I'm sure it matters. I'm not in those circles.
Right. It's like, oh, that's cool. I don't even know where Bernard's star is.
Right.
So.
I'm like, well, that's interesting. There's another dying planet out there. Cool,
right.
Cool. But also they're saying that fortunately the next generation of like spectrographs will deliver higher quality data than what they have now. So basically saying like there are better instruments that are going to come in the future that will help them like better distinguish if there is a planet out there, or just like to better find out about everything else around. Which of course happens with most things. Things just get better.
Exactly. Technology, all that.
Right. And so right now this is like a planet candidate kind of. Okay. Like to see if it is real. But it looks like from like follow-up studies and such, they're saying that this world is at least 3 times as massive as Earth, and it's really cold.
Right.
And they're arguing that the planet's long orbit around this like the sun, the Bernard star, that its surface temperature is around negative 207 degrees Fahrenheit. Right. Which sounds awful. Yeah, it does. But that's way too cold to support like surface life as we know it. So they're not trying to say there are like aliens
life
up there,
on the planet, right?
Yeah, but there's they are speculating that it could have like ice and things like that, but not liquid water because it's so cold.
Like Pluto or something? Because Pluto's pretty far away from our sun.
Yeah, sun. Pluto's not considered a planet anymore.
It's like a dwarf planet.
Yeah, it's like so tiny.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if Pluto has ice on it, but
it should be cold. I would imagine though, because if it's 3 times the size of Earth, and then that little Bernard star it's
like a dying sun.
Yeah, and like 6 times smaller than our sun. Of course, it's gonna that.
Right, it's not going to be warm enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So if they're saying that if they had to speculate about what the planet is like, they're saying it might be like a scaled up version of some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn. Okay. Something like and then they list like names like Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, or Titan, and there are large amounts of rock and ice water. Right. And the key question is whether the world is large enough to retain an atmosphere. And if so, it could be more like they said like a puffy, like mini Neptune, more than a solid super Earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But even so, they're saying like if it had an Earth-like atmosphere, the planet would be far too cold for liquid water to exist anyway.
Right. Yeah. Negative 270.
Right. So even if it had sort of an atmosphere like Earth, it would still be too cold. Right. So we're still not looking at alien life.
Right. Just other planets out there. But that's cool too though, because
and they found one that has ice water, which water of any kind is interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, so good for them. We'll see how we'll see in another 20 years if they confirm that it's something.
Hopefully faster, though, because it's nice to know like what's in the universe around us. So
I agree.
That's pretty cool.
I agree. So thank you guys so much for listening to this social media news episode, and we hoped to talk to you all soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.